Fox.
Here.
Councilmember Sharp.
Present.
Councilmember Smiley.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions to the agenda as presented tonight, City Manager?
Yes, Mayor, I had a couple of changes for the agenda. There's a revised new business number 7 and an additional new business item that you can place wherever you see fit, if it's appropriate, number 9.
Okay. Any from the dais? Councilmember Gacho?
Thank you. I'd like to add a new business, I guess we can call it number 10, regarding charter language amendment for the spending amount threshold. And then another piece of new business, number 11, a presentation on PACER ratings and trying to follow in line with discussion we had a few weeks ago. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Seeing none, first off tonight is we have a presentation. It's a project update. It's the Downtown Development Authority Plan, and Assistant City Manager Drew Benson will be the presenter. Go ahead, Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick update, not the intention to take up a ton of time, but you all may recall, this was before I started, but the city entered into agreement with CIB Planning to begin the process of updating their Downtown Development Authority Plan and the tax increment financing plan that goes with it. This was funded in part by the MEDC and their Redevelopment Ready Communities Program, technical assistance. And the intention of these proposed updates that would ultimately flow through City Council would be to consider extending the life of the current DDA plan, which is set to expire after 2028. The intention with that would be to recover some lost years of increment that was not captured due to lower property values after the recession. The other potentially more exciting portion of a potential plan to the update to the DDA plan would be to add new allowable activities. All activities that DDA funds can be spent on must be accounted for or outlined within their development plan. So we've invited Carmen Aventini from CIB Planning. He can provide a little bit more in-depth information if that's if you have any questions. And the idea is that we're looking for ways, working with the DDA, to potentially spur more economic development activities, new projects, potentially new businesses. And some of these amendments would allow for that kind of flexibility. I will offer the floor to Carmen at this point.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Beagle and council members. It's really good to see you in person. And as you know, the pledge went a lot smoother too than it does on Zoom. So with that, with the DDA plan update, we through the pandemic we did lose some time there. Unfortunately, I think we lost a lot of time on a number of things. But the original intent in terms of updating the plan is still there. That we, as Drew indicated, we had the 2 primary goals. I know we had a joint work session where we talked about this particular project along with the other 2 RSC projects. And you know, ideally what we want to do is extend this out because of the time we lost during the recession, because we did the DDA was underwater and they weren't collecting tax increment during that time, and the city had to cover that. It can be, and it is obviously being repaid back, but we want to make sure that the DDA still has the tools that it needs to make more happen, because we're not finished. You may recall the original plan is much more extensive than even what we have right now, which is great, but there's still a lot more to be done. And we want to make sure that we have the tax increment, the timing of it, want to have enough time to do what we need, especially in uncertain times right now. But we also want to have, one of the tools we're putting in here is project-specific tax increment financing, where we can actually put deals together using potential future tax increment from that project that we can use to close the gap on financing. And I can tell you right now, it's really tough out there to put real estate development deals together. Housing's not difficult, but anything that relates to retail, restaurants, any office especially, it's very difficult with banks right now. They're kind of they're pulling things in. They're worried because they've got a lot of property out there right now that they've landed on that's potentially at risk. They don't know what's going to happen as a result of the pandemic. especially in the office market. So they're being ultra conservative. And this is one tool, though, that allows us to help overcome those issues that we're dealing with and to close the gap in certain instances. And I'd like to mention, too, our next step on here is to meet with the county, to meet with Phil Weipert and then meet with the folks at the county and kind of gauge what kind of support we have from them and whether they're interested in extending it. If it turns out that there's not a lot of support to extend it, we always have the ability to just say, okay, we'll just update our project list, we'll punt, and we'll deal with it down the road at some point in time. But it'd be nice to extend it now if we can. Never hurts to ask. But if we only come out of it with the project list, I think we've still accomplished quite a bit. Things have changed a lot since 2004, and we need to use the money in different ways than we did at that point in time. So that's the next step. So what would happen is once we gauge what's happening with the county and how they feel about it and the other taxing jurisdictions, we go through the adoption process, and then it goes back to the DDA, and they recommend to you, and then you ultimately have the final approval on the DDA plan. So it's ultimately up to you, and we would likely enter into a new agreement with the county. We currently have an agreement with them dating back to 2004. For those who were involved at the time, you may remember it wasn't easy the first time around. Hopefully now they'll see all the things that we've accomplished, and we'll have a little more support from them this time around. It was challenging the last time, so that's where we're at. That's where we're going. So we're not we're not asking you to adopt or approve it. It's just to make sure you're aware of what's going on and that you find what we're doing and they're acceptable before we meet with the county, and that you know what our process is here.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Just a couple quick questions. Thank you. I agree that an extension would be worthwhile, especially when we had the recession and then the pandemic that had impacted any development that might have happened. And I think that's good because we were stalled there for probably 8 years or so after the recessionary period. The one question I had is any of this required for getting our MRC certification, or does that just continue as it was, our certified Michigan redevelopment ready community certification?
So we received funding to help us reach the certification goal, and one of the things that we identified in the downtown area was, we've got a downtown plan, we know what we're going to do, but one of our tools is kind of out of whack because of what happened during the recession. So they agreed to fund, as a part of the RC project, updating the plan because that's one of the tools that we need. So what they do is they look at everything we're doing downtown and they said, okay, we'll help fund this because you need that tool to make things happen. So it's a part of the certification process, but it's specifically having the DDA plan updated would not be absolutely necessary. We could have said we're okay with the current plan and they'd be fine with that, but we weren't okay with it, and they were willing to fund us making those changes.
And then my second question is the expanded scope of activities allowable under it. So the way it looks like it's written is we could actually use that potentially for environmental remediation, infrastructure build-out, meaning let's say a build-out because of some structural issue in an existing building, whatever, that could be used to help supplement a person coming in with a new business?
Yeah, actually, we're writing it in such a way. It used to be, back in the day, we would write things very specifically, and we've learned over time that each time you want to do something that's not included in there, you have to go back and redo it all over again. And it's more difficult to adopt a DDA plan than it is to adopt a zoning ordinance or a master plan. It's really difficult, as you'll see when we go through the adoption process. So we want to make sure we hit it right this time, and we've pretty much included anything that could possibly come up related to the downtown and development activities. It's pretty broad, so there's going to be a lot of flexibility to do things using the tax increment money.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Garland Fox?
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So the question I had, I actually have two questions as well. On page 13, under development costs and financing capabilities, in one section, I thought I had read that no money's going towards any projects related to the plan would come from the general fund. However, on page 13, one of the bullets says City of Wixom financing It is anticipated that the city of Wixom will finance a portion of some or all of the projects using general fund monies, land acquisition fund, other revenue.
Let me see here, it was on page 13?
Page 13.
And which paragraph is it?
It's the second bullet under development costs and financing capabilities.
Must have different pages.
The second, there's two different documents.
I
One
think
is
it's the.
black and white.
it must
It
be
looks like the
second.
old one. It's the one, are you looking at that one?
Yes.
It
Just looking at
is,
this.
it's the one dated 2003.
Oh, that's
So
the
that
old plan.
changed.
Correct.
Okay, so that totally went away.
Yes, that's going to disappear completely.
Great.
Everything
Well, but
will
it
be
is
there.
still in place currently.
Yes.
That is the plan that it's, yeah, the DDA is currently, and we're looking to update.
So that'll be replaced, great. And then the second piece was the relocation. Is that still in place, or is that going to go away as well?
Yeah, one of the state act requirements is you have to address in the plan relocation of if you're displacing people that live within the DDA district and one of your project forces them to move, you have to deal with that. What we found is that it really, at this point in time, unless you already know what that project's going to be, we don't know if we're going to displace anybody because we don't know what all the projects are we're going to see over the next 10 or 20 years. So what we've said in there is when we encounter that, at that point in time, we will follow whatever rules and regulations we have to regarding the displacement of people. So,
How likely is that someone would get displaced?
no.
Oh,
There's
okay.
not that much residential. I mean, most of our residential is new,
Right.
so it's not likely that we're going to displace people. And if we did, it'd be very small, and the DDA would have the ability to deal with that. And obviously, anything financing-wise would be approved by council anyway, so you'd be aware of that if it did happen.
Okay.
Highly unlikely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Councilmember Concho?
Thank you. I guess just looking over the proposed, like, dollar amounts for if things were redone, and kind of going back to, I guess, a comment I had a few, I don't even remember when, I feel like we were in person, not on Zoom, but relating to the property tax amounts that homeowners have that are living in the VCA and DDA, and trying to decrease that. Obviously, those dollar amounts look like that we're keeping status quo on in terms of what is being captured and whatnot, and so I don't know that I'd necessarily be in favor of all the details that are listed in here, especially regarding private projects and then like the barn and whatnot. I think I understand we want to keep the DDA funded and make things look nice downtown and have some revenue coming in, but a lot of our residents are paying quite high taxes right now just because they live across the street. And I don't think that's, I mean, they're paying higher taxes than people that live north of Maple Road, so I don't necessarily agree with that.
Mayor, if I could?
Sure.
Well, the premise behind tax increment financing is it doesn't really have an impact on the taxes that a property pays. It's more a distribution of where it goes. So you're not going to pay more or less whether you're in the DDA or not. It's going to be the same. And so you're going to pay those taxes in the new increment. Like, let's say there's a new house that was built. Instead of going in the general fund, it will go into the DDA, but the greater amount is actually coming from the county. That's the largest tax capture. So you're not really paying more money if you're a resident, plus you're getting the benefit of all these other taxing jurisdictions. The new increment that goes to them will come back to the DDA. So it's really, you really don't lose anything if you're a taxpayer.
Do we not have an additional VCA? I thought in a relatively recent Zoom meeting, we had talked about that, and is there an additional VCA millage?
Yeah, there's a additional millage that is part of it, that was discretionary, so this plan doesn't have anything to do with that, I think is Carmen's point, right? That was voted on, or, by that was imposed previously under the DDA, yes.
But do those funds are what's being used to calculate the projected costs of some of this stuff?
They're a portion, so if you look on page 17 of the updated plan, it kind of gives you our projections of what the revenues would be on an annual basis over the course of the life of the plan, broken out by each individual taxing jurisdiction. So you'll see that there's one column for the DDA special millage, which is 1.3640 mils. But that is not the only, revenue stream that goes into the, total tax increment revenue, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm just questioning like where our DDA special millage is and how that's relating to what additional taxes people across the street are paying compared to people north of Maple Road. So I understand it's not the full funding of it, but it seems that it does play some small portion at least. So
Yeah, there is, compared to someone who doesn't live in the DDA but also still lives in Wixom, yes, there's a slightly higher millage rate because of this extra levy based on where they are geographically.
thank you.
Mayor, if I could add to that, that was required by the county. They would not approve the previous, when we went to them to approve the plan, they would not do so without us adopting a millage, and you said at one point, whatever. So it was kind of, we had to do that. We didn't have any choice. That was kind of but the other thing to keep in mind too, though, is there's also the ability for these funds to be spent in the DDA district on items that might normally have to be paid for by the general fund, and does provide a direct benefit to the people who live in and around. So there could actually be things that come up, improvements that come up, that might directly benefit that particular neighborhood in the future. So it's not like they won't see some benefit from that additional millage that they're paying for.
Yeah, it's like an ongoing special assessment district essentially. And so I guess does the county have to approve this then? If that's what I heard earlier. So would a part of that discussion also be if we wanted to decrease the overall DDA special millage, would that be a part of the adjustment? Or could we do that on our own without the county signing off on it?
No, Mayor, that was a part of the agreement that's in writing. So frankly, I don't think there's a chance that we're going to get them to sign a new agreement in dropping that number. I don't see that happening. I think that if the best we could do is get them to extend the plan for us and amend the project list. I think that's really the best we can do. But if we're looking for them to do that, and then we're also saying we want to pull out the mills, I just don't see them doing it. I mean, I'm being frank with you. While it's a great idea, I just don't see them doing that, because they're the ones who required us to put it in there in the first place. If anything, they're going to try and cut back. They're going to try and cut back on the amount of their participation in the plan. They're going to want to cut it down from 100% to 75% or some other number like that. And then at that point, if that happens and we can't get them to budge on, the extension without cutting back, then we may not touch that this time around. But we're going to have to still abide by the original agreement with them.
It looks I guess just Oakland County on its own, it says .004 and change mills, I assume. Oakland County Community .0015 or 13, it's a little blurry here.
Yeah.
And then the County Parks and Rec is .00023. So I'm just, so you're saying they won't even, you don't think they would even adjust it down a little bit from what it currently is for the city special millage? Or if we didn't say we want to eliminate it, we just wanted to reduce it, you don't think they would be all right with that even?
I don't think so, but it certainly doesn't hurt to ask. I mean, we can add
Yeah,
that.
I was going to say, your comments are noted, right? And this is part of why we wanted to have this discussion, is get your thoughts and feedback before we go into those meetings. So we can take this note and say,
Sure.
We're interested in doing this and try to get some feedback and see what can be done.
Okay, I would appreciate that. That's my main thing here. Thank you.
Councilmember Berman?
Maybe it's just clarification, but the DDA, the tax money comes in, and then what we get back is a portion that the county would normally keep, correct?
Correct.
So that's why we need the county approval on this, because they're giving up money for us to have these funds to spend in our DDA.
Correct.
So if we didn't have the DDA, the same taxable value or same taxes would be assessed, just that money would go to the county, with the exception of the special millage.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess we're good then. Thanks, Carmen. Thanks, Drew.
Question.
All right, moving on, we've got approval of minutes. We've got one set of minutes to approve tonight, and those are for the regular city council meeting of June 22nd, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Any discussion? All right, I got a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting of June 22nd, 2021. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. We got two sets of correspondence tonight. One is a notice of hearing for the electric customers of DTE Electric Company, case number U-20866. And the second correspondence is a notice of hearing for the electric customers of DTE Electric Company, case number U-21004. With that, we move on to the first call to the public. I'll read the rules to the call to the public. They are as follow. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority of vote of council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council. And all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody tonight for the first call to the public? Agenda items only. Again, agenda items only. I'll close the first call to the public and move on to city manager's report. The first report we have tonight is the fire monthly report. Any questions for Chief Roberts? Very good. Second one is the police monthly report of May 2021. Any questions for Public Safety Director Moore? And the third one is the water monthly report for May 2021. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Had to break the speed. Tim, I saw that we did have two actions on the ongoing fog discussion, the fats, oils, and greases. Now, when the action letter gets sent out to the offending business,
Yeah.
and the cleaning of the trap occurs, is it re-inspected immediately thereafter at the business owner's expense?
They do it, depending on the timing, but they do it shortly after, yes. Just
So it's-
verify.
yeah, so it doesn't go on for another year
Right.
before they're inspecting
Right.
next?
Yep.
Okay. All right,
Just to verify that it's been done.
okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. We'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
Support?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to the first item of new business, which is a recommendation to authorize the purchase of professional services to rebuild the Kofax batch class templates used in the finance department from ImageSoft of Southfield, Michigan, at a price of $4,680 with funding from Record Retention Maintenance and Support account number 101-283-959.320. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Support.
Very good. Marilyn?
Good evening. This report is to ask for approval for a rebuild of our Kofax batch class templates. Just recently, we updated our COFAX software in our department to the newest version and placed on a new server in order to continue our maintenance agreements on this particular software. And during that process, it was discovered that the batches that are used to facilitate the scanning of our accounts payable documents will need to be updated and rebuilt on the newest version of the software. So that facilitated this quote from our current provider of our on-base software that houses all of those documents for us to assist in rebuilding that batch for us. And what that batch does is we scan in all of our accounts payable check documents and backup documents, and there's then it recognizes certain pieces of that document and references back to an Excel spreadsheet of all the details of those checks and those documents. So it has to build kind of a background working system in order to link those documents together in order to scan those into the system. So tonight I ask approval to move forward with that rebuilding of the system so that we can continue the upgrade of the COFAX system. Without this, we can't move into the newest version of the software because it won't work in scanning our documents going forward if we don't complete this batch class rebuild. There's sufficient funding in the fiscal year 21-22 budget to pay for these expenses, and that is a not to exceed price, so hopefully it will come in less than the $46.80 and the number of hours that they anticipate to do that. It'll be based on actual time and materials time not to exceed $46.80.
Very good. Any questions? Councilmember Gremlin Fox?
Hi, Marilyn. I support the motion. I just have a question. How often does the software get updated that would necessitate this type of change?
Actually, this batch has not been rebuilt since it was originated in 2000, I believe it was 2003.
Okay.
It was the early 2000s. So typically, you're not going to see this very often.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I just did not got
Oh, okay. Any other questions? All right, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to authorize the purchase of professional services to rebuild the COFAX batch class templates used in the finance department from Image Soft of Southfield, Michigan at a price of $4,680 with funding from record retention maintenance and support account number 101-283-959.320. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, motion passes. New business number 2 is a recommendation to authorize Steve Brown, city manager, to sign all documents required for an application and reporting related to the funds being distributed to non-entitlement units of local government provided by the American Rescue Plant Act, ARPA, Coronavirus Local Physical Recovery Fund. So a motion?
So moved.
Support.
City Manager Brown?
So this is basically a routine request to just authorize me to handle documents that need to be signed and executed on behalf of the city for these funds that are coming to what are referred to as non-entitlement units of local government, meaning cities and townships and villages. There's a bunch of monies that are in the offing that would be received by the city. It talks about different things in the report that might be authorized uses of those funds in the bullet points that are in the middle part of the report to City Council. We do have broad flexibility within those individual groups to spend money within those different categories. The real reason for this request is because there's a lot of unknowns out there in terms of what is going to be required when things get finalized at the state level. That's mentioned in the tail end of the first page of the report, where it's talking about there'll be a variety of things that we anticipate being required: online application, a treasury compliance form, which is not yet available, awards terms and conditions agreement, assurances of compliance with Title VI, and other things that we don't know at this time. And instead of coming back to you and slowing down our receipt of funding, we're looking for mayor and council to provide authorization to me to sign the necessary documents to realize those funds that would be made available to us as a non-entitlement local government.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you, Ms. Brown. So for every use of those ARPA funds, then we'll have to fill out some sort of application and then a report back to the government then? for each time we use it? Let's say it was for a public health expenditure, a vaccine clinic or something that we decide to hold public. That's probably one of them that might be allowed, right?
Right. Actually, the initial part of this is they had to create an application process at the state level to facilitate all of these monies going out to these local units. So initially, the biggest part of it is going to be the application, because, I mean, believe it or not, we have the ability to deny the funds and say we don't want them, and they would redistribute those to other units on some sort of mathematical form. So basically, they had to create an application process that gives us the ability to say, yes, we want the funds. And that has to be signed by an authorized individual of the city to say, yes, we do want them. And there's other assurances that we have to abide by when we're spending this money in the future, that we're going to abide by certain rules and regulations. So you have to sign documents stating that we agree to this, we know we have to abide by these rules and regulations, and that we won't do anything we're not supposed to do with these funds. And then there'll be routine reporting throughout the processes of what we actually utilize the funds for, and there'll be documents that need to be signed along the way as we're doing the reporting. But it won't necessarily be every individual expense that you incur, you know, that you say, we want to spend it for this, we got to go for approval. It won't work that way. It's a more broad spectrum. So it's basically anything that needs to be signed throughout the way in agreement documents or things like that, that Steve would have the ability to sign on our behalf to do that.
That reporting would be also given to council then?
Yes.
As well, and you probably have certain GAAP rules you have to follow at the
Yeah.
end of the fiscal year then?
Yeah.
For accounting for those?
Yeah, and it's anticipated we would receive the first amount probably within the next month or two, once everything's signed, and then the next half of it would come later on in the fiscal year. So, you know, and there's still a lot of discussions to be had of what the wishes are to utilize the funds for.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to authorize Steve Brown, city manager, to sign all documents required for application and reporting related to the funds being distributed to the non-entitlement units of local government provided by the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Excuse me. New business number 3 is a recommendation to approve the submission of a grant application to the U.S. Department of Justice for Police Body-Worn Camera Implementation Program. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Very good. Public Safety Director Moore.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Recently, the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, released a funding opportunity for municipal governments to help municipal police departments implement body-worn camera, a new body-worn camera program for those municipalities that do not currently have body-worn cameras. The Wixom Police Department, although we've had in-car cameras for at least the last 10 to 12 years, we currently do not have body-worn cameras. I had budgeted for the purchase of body-worn cameras and potential infrastructure updates to support body-worn cameras in the next fiscal year's budget. So not the one we're currently in, 21-22. I had budgeted for it in 22-23. Well, then I saw that this grant opportunity dropped within the last month, and I believed it was a good opportunity, perhaps, with your approval, to not only submit for this grant, but perhaps push the implementation of a body-worn camera system into the fiscal year that we're currently in, 21-22. The U.S. Department of Justice has allocated $27.5 million towards this funding opportunity. It's anticipated that the grants will start dropping on October 1st, which is the federal fiscal year. The deadline for application for the city of Wixom is July 26th, so 13 days from now. I've already set some of this in motion, but I haven't done the lion's share of work until I got approval from Mr. Brown and of course from the 7 of you. The funding opportunity encompasses not only the body-worn cameras, but also infrastructure updates that we might need, and we would certainly have to work in tandem with the city's IT provider, but also potential personnel increases that we might experience as a result of having a body-worn camera program. A logical question is why would there be an increase in personnel costs? Anecdotally, from speaking to my colleagues and from attending a number of seminars regarding body-worn camera programs, many police departments see a dramatic increase in the number of Freedom of Information requests once it's known that a police department has body-worn cameras, as well as discovery requests from attorneys who are representing their clients in a criminal matter. Often, our records manager will receive a discovery request from a criminal defense attorney, and once they find out that we don't have body-worn cameras and that all we have are the in-car cameras, they typically don't even complete the discovery request. They're looking for the body camera footage. So it's anticipated that there could be a significant increase in FOIA, Freedom of Information, and discovery requests, which would require not only compiling those audio and video files, but also redacting them. So if there's a child in view of the camera, that child's image has to be blurred out. And now the redaction software is wonderful, but it still is time consuming. If there's criminal justice information that comes out over the police officer's radio or on the police officer's mobile data computer, that has to be blurred out so that we're in compliance with criminal justice information standards. If there's someone who's scantily clad or not dressed at all in the footage, obviously we're gonna redact that or blur that out as well. So it's anticipated there could be additional personnel costs. This is an example of what the body camera could look like. It's approximately a little bit bigger than the size of a deck of cards, and it applies right and it attaches right to the police officer's uniform. And I am requesting permission to go ahead and apply for this funding opportunity.
Director Moore, what are you talking hour-wise? What do you think? Is it going to be a new position, or is it going to be 10 hours a week? What are we looking at on this position that will be handling these videos and the FOIA requests?
Sure. Currently, in the police department's operating budget, there is an account called part-time help clerical. And currently, there's a budgeted amount in there of $21,225. And that's the part-time help clerical account. It's anticipated, and I've spoken with the records manager, the police records manager on this, it's anticipated that we could potentially have to, dare I say, double that maybe, and possibly create convert that part-time clerical position to a full-time position to handle the FOIA request. Not only the clerical work that position currently entails, but the additional FOIA and discovery. I'm certainly not firm on that. We could potentially hire another part-time person. But I don't believe the hours that are allocated for that clerical person would cover the amount of work that person would have to do.
So what do you think then with the grant, with the price of the cameras, will the city have to come up with, the city's portion?
Well, I gave you, in my report, I gave you the worst case scenario. If we were to purchase, we have 21 sworn police officers, including me, in the police department. If we were to purchase body-worn cameras for every one of them with a couple extras in case one goes down. Now gratefully, we don't have many events where the entire police department has to be here at the same time. In fact, the one I'm thinking of is coming up here in a couple weeks, the Light the Night. So the worst case scenario would be that we would purchase cameras for the entire police department with a spare or two. The grant is capped. It's a 1-to-1 match, and the federal award is capped at $2,000 per camera. So 2,000 times 23 cameras is 46,000. The city would have to pay at least 46,000. We would have to pay at least the one-to-one match.
So potentially, it could be $46,000 plus another $45,000 to $50,000 per year with the employee, correct?
Maybe not that much because we've already budgeted for the 21,225 for that part-time person.
I'm all in favor of giving our police officers everything they need to be safe and keep the city safe, but I'm having heartburn with that second position. And that's, anybody? Councilmember Smiley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Hello, Chief Moore. In our packet, you kind of sell this a little more, optimistically. You kind of left out, the good parts of this. Strengthening government accountability and transparency, assisting in de-escalating conflicts, increased trust and communication, capture empirical evidence, that kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to, this to the body cams that, I just thought we should talk about too. The adding of a position, that is, a rough one too, for myself as well. And I know you've looked into this and you've got, you've certainly got a better handle on it than we'll ever have, with the idea that all the FOIA and discovery requests that would come in, it wouldn't come in for, this is a question, not a statement, it wouldn't come in for everything that, for every officer's shift. It would be your periodic, more controversial case or more, I guess, how do you know how many FOIAs would come monthly, I guess, or even weekly based on, the 21 officers that are using these?
Well, I'll address the easy one first, which is the discovery requests. Discovery being when an officer is engaged, has made an arrest, and now there's a criminal process in place. For the discovery, every time somebody went to trial, either at the district court level or the circuit court level, you could expect a discovery request that would entail creating the audio and video files for the defense attorney, for the prosecuting attorney's office, with the attached redaction. As far as the FOIA requests, I honestly wouldn't even know how to guess how many we would get. I have heard anecdotally from colleagues who have body-worn camera programs, and again from seminars I've taken at the International Association of Chiefs of Police that address body-worn camera programs, and I've been told by many sources, if you implement body-worn cameras, you better have the people, the human resources to back up the program.
Okay. Let me restate it this way. You said you gave us kind of a worst case scenario with the doubling hours. I appreciate that. I want to know the worst case. What would be a best case scenario? Do you have that in mind as well? Like that would the budgeted amount would be enough. A part-time, half-time person, might get it done. Maybe. I'm not to ask you to commit, but that would be best case.
Our part-time clerical person, as we've budgeted for him or her, does not exceed 29 hours a week, Marilyn. That's what we try to hold them to. Do I believe that a part-time person working 29 hours a week could accomplish the clerical work as well as FOIA and discovery and redaction? I don't believe they could.
Okay. One last question.
Sure.
Is there an outsource? Is there a third-party outsource business that can do the editing and the facilitating of the video?
That is a good question. I've never heard of any police department outsourcing that redaction work, only because you're dealing with the sensitive criminal justice information, and now you're releasing it out of the hands of our control. That is a good, valid question, but I've just never heard of any other police department doing that.
I gotcha. Okay. All right, well, in today's climate, I think body cams have tremendous value, and I support at least the pursuing of the grant. Thank you for all the information.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Berman?
Well, first, just a statement that I obviously support the moving forward with this grant. I know you and I had a conversation earlier this year about possibly if we could move up, so I'm glad to see that it's moving up. That being said, earlier this year you did voice your concern to me with watching how some others, local municipalities, were going to adopt this moving forward quicker. Are they moving? Are they all the local cities around us? Are they moving at the same pace we are now with this grant?
In speaking with some of my colleagues,
Yeah.
I'm not getting the sense that they're also applying for these grants, for this grant.
Okay. And then the second thing was, I mean, I don't know about outsourcing with chain of custody of the video and whatnot. I could see a defense attorney attacking that pretty quickly. But is this something that someone else in the police department, one of the desk aides or somebody could be trained to do the redaction? Does it have to be a new person, as long as it's a current employee of the police department?
Potentially, we could train a police service aide or 2 or 3 to engage in this activity. When we do that, then I would respectfully ask that the police service aide account increase that amount, because then that's work that they're not doing during their regular duties.
Okay, I was just curious if there would be a reallocation that would be possible without the increase that seems to be the concern that some people are having.
Sure. It's possible, certainly.
But
to
regardless,
have other existing staff members engage in this work, sure.
Regardless, I support you moving forward with the grant, especially if it's going to help cover the cost in getting this done.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you, Mayor. One question was, can service aids be used in the redaction process? So that's still a possibility. We just have to increase that account, which would probably be the least cost method of doing it. The other question, could any of the forfeiture funds possibly be used for the additional manpower? Because it is, in a way, crime enforcement, right? I know it's not a physical device that would be funding, but could that possibly be used as well?
I don't have my allowable expenses with me, so I can't tell you if it's federal or state or both, but I do know that personnel to accomplish a criminal justice mission or a law enforcement mission is an expendable expense under either the federal, state, or both forfeiture. And the bulk of our larger account is under the federal.
Yeah, federal. So that might be something to look at. And then and is it possible that DOJ might have additional grant opportunities to supplement this?
I could see this being the first of perhaps other funding opportunities for this program.
Good. I support moving it forward the 1 year. We're going to do it anyway, so let's get the grant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions for you. I know that you're in favor of the body cameras. How does staff feel about those?
Overall, I believe staff, and I'll focus in on the police officers, the one who will be wearing these, are in favor of having the body-worn cameras.
Okay.
Yes.
And then as far as your peers in other areas that have not moved in that direction, do you know why they haven't?
I can only speak to what my reluctance was for doing it in this current fiscal year. A police department the size of Wixom, sometimes it's beneficial to see what some of the larger agencies are doing, to learn from their mistakes, frankly, to steal their policies, to follow their trail. And I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can tell you some of my reluctance was let's wait to see what the Oakland County Sheriff's Office does, being the largest police agency in Oakland County. Let's see what they do. Let's see what their policies look like. Let's see what their RFPs look like with vendors, and maybe even steal their bid process, borrow, sorry. So that was my reluctance. I can imagine that perhaps some of my colleagues also had that same type of reluctance.
And so the county does have, the deputies have the body cameras?
They do not. The Oakland County Board of Commissioners directed the sheriff to go out for bid for body-worn cameras, which the Sheriff's Department did, and I don't believe they've moved forward with funding the program at this point.
Okay. I support this. I think it's good for the officers. I think it's good for the city. I think it's just, just purely a risk management issue. I think it's a good idea. As far as the staffing, I understand what you're saying, that it's going to take a lot more work. I would be in favor of maybe once everything gets put into place, monitoring how much more work that is, and then reassessing, can the service aides do it? Do we need a full-time clerical person to do that? Because I agree, it's going to be a lot more work.
Thank you for using the phrase risk management. I believe this would also qualify for an MMRMA, the city's risk manager, a risk avoidance program grant to fund a portion of this program.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Moore, since we've already budgeted for this in the future and council's already approved that capital budget, is there any downside to applying for the free money now? And even if we get it on October 1st, we don't actually have to, we're not forced to buy anything, right? So we can answer some of the great questions that have been asked tonight and create a plan and a policy before they actually go into effect. Probably not even until January 1st of 2022, I would guess, if we don't get the money until October 1st. Is that correct? I mean, we have some time on this. We're just voting for a grant application tonight, not to actually do anything yet.
Well, the grant application is quite in-depth, and it does require me to lay out a plan, an implementation plan, as well as having a policy in place, which we're also working on to make sure that in-car cameras, we have an in-car camera policy currently, and it's a good policy, but it doesn't encompass body-worn cameras because it's an older policy. So we're currently working on getting a in-car / body-worn camera policy in place. So the grant application does require that I establish certain benchmarks before they even fund it.
That's the work you've already done, probably pulling some of that together for July 26th deadline.
Yes.
I agree with Councilmember Berman and Deputy Mayor Resnick about we've already planned to do this, let's pull it ahead. So I think it's a good policy. Department of Justice thinks so too, I guess. They're giving away $72 million, $27 million. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. So I know this still would need to be bid out, but do you have any ballpark idea on the cost per unit for body cam?
Yes, $500 per unit.
Okay, so the 2,000 covers it pretty easily.
Yes.
Right.
The $2,000 per camera is the limit that the federal government has put on the federal award. So, and that would cover the infrastructure updates, potentially a personnel upgrade, as well as the cameras.
Okay. And then I guess when we're talking about extra staff, potentially extra time spent, and you'd mentioned that most of the requests would be FOIA requests, and I guess it was my understanding that we, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, we can provide an estimate as to the cost of providing the materials. So really, wouldn't we essentially just be passing on, even if we're bringing someone else on board, we're just paying them with revenue we're generating for FOIA requests? Is that, I'm not understanding that, or would that be right?
The city does, under the law, we are permitted to pass on a reasonable cost to the requester. I don't know what that is, though. I don't know what.
I feel like it's our actual cost, like up to our actual cost. It can't be arbitrary, but I remember a few years ago, people were requesting all sorts of stuff, and then they get these massive estimates on what something was gonna be, and then they decided, well, I don't need all of that, here's what I actually need. So I appreciate the funding concerns, but I think maybe that's something that we can firm up as well, is just making sure that we can charge whatever, an hourly rate or something like that, because then that kind of, I think, abates the funding concerns in some respects, maybe not fully, because they'd still be here. It's not like, hey, we have 12 FOIA requests, you can come in today and tomorrow sort of a situation, but I think it at least helps.
I believe it's the lowest cost employee hourly rate or real cost that can perform the work. And I don't think that this would be a particularly high level salary position necessarily. So, and if we don't have anybody else trained for that work, because it will be pretty specialized work, I think we could charge the time spent on those FOIA requests for that. Correct. Yeah. You're right on that front, number one, and I think you're also right to point out that that will not cover 100% of the cost of the employee necessarily, but it will offset some of the costs.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I like I said earlier, I too support this, and let's try to, I really would hate to add another employee for this, so let's monitor it and let's see what we can do, and maybe if we can supplement with a police aid now and then and keep the costs down that way. That'd be good. So, okay, Councilmember Smiley?
Sorry, I stick in one more quick question. The last point about FOIA is great and encouraging. Does that apply to this discovery requests? Would you be able to pass on an expense just like you would for a FOIA?
I believe under discovery, and Mr. Berman, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that could be rolled in with the fines costs on perhaps the defendant upon a guilty conviction.
Oh.
Just a bankruptcy attorney here.
Well, just another element.
We'll check it.
We don't need to explore that any further right now, but it sounded like we
Sounds accurate, but
It sounded like we'd have
Let's go
more
with it then.
discovery than we would FOIA. That's why it'd be important. So
Yeah, we can check into that.
doesn't stop what we're doing here now. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, seeing nothing, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve the submission of a grant application to the U.S. Department of Justice for a police body-worn camera implementation program. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good.
Thank you.
New business number 4 is a recommendation to waive the bid process and authorize the purchase of a replacement Hearst Combi tool for $11,500 from Apollo Fire Equipment Sales, Romeo, Michigan, from the Jaws of Life account number 411-336-978.359.
So move.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council.
There we go. Cool. Chief Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here before you tonight to, get your permission to waive the bid process. The piece of equipment that we're talking about is over 15 years old. It is used to complement what we currently have. This one's quite a bit older, and it doesn't actually, it's not compatible with what the current equipment that we have is.
Any questions? Councilmember Berman?
was there a new Jaws of Life that came with the new rescue truck?
Yes, there is.
So this would be to go in the other?
Currently, this particular unit, the Centaur, is equipped in one of the ambulances. So it's a little bit smaller of a unit, more maneuverable, and I know how much you guys like photos. So I have several with me tonight if you'd like to see them.
Yes. Photos are good, yes.
I remember seeing the new one, so.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
We can share.
Sure. I have another.
Can I keep this?
Well, those are yours. You'll have to pay for the color copy, of course. Yeah, so you can see the age of the older one. It's been in service for 15 years. It is a backpack model, so the battery and the pump configuration is all inclusive in the backpack. The new unit, much smaller and is self-contained. The battery technology from what we currently use and the new tool will work together.
The new one is battery powered?
Yes.
So will you get,
Both are battery powered,
Oh.
just one's a separate unit compared to, and the other one's all
do
inclusive.
you have to get like an extra battery, like when you have the yard equipment, when you get halfway through weed whacking and,
The current equipment we have, we'll be able to share the battery technology.
okay,
Yeah, all the
Okay.
chargers, batteries, et cetera.
very good.
So this one will match the one that's in the new rescue truck?
Same battery technology, different tool altogether.
Small.
Smaller, it does both. Combination, right, it'll cut and spread. The big truck, the big tools, only spread or only cut.
So that's why it's called a copy.
Yes, absolutely. Combination portion is that it does both. So the one you're seeing there that we currently have, the Centaur, is the only combination tool we have currently.
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Hello, Chief Roberts. I think I got this, but just we're replacing the combi tool because it essentially, it barely works. It sounds like it's really not safe to be counting on it.
It'd be a heck of a tool to have in your garage at home, but for what we do,
Right, oh yeah.
it just doesn't serve that purpose anymore. You have to imagine, with the technology and advancements in the equipment, so do we have those technology advancements in the automobiles, so.
Sure.
We just want to
I mean,
have.
are you taking it out and expecting it to get the job done right now, or is the?
It's currently in service, and if we need it, we use it for its ability.
It is, okay, but it's making you nervous that it's so old and the battery's so?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The manufacturer doesn't support the technology anymore. There are no batteries to have. We have to have them rebuilt by some independent source, and then there absolutely is no guarantee behind the tool at this point. Because
Understood.
we're using equipment that's not provided by the manufacturer.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear. That's good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
What's the weight difference in the handheld portion of the old versus the new?
It's
massive.
The actual, believe it or not, there's very little between the actual tool itself. The backpack weighs about 50 pounds.
50 pounds.
But because of technology, you keep in mind, the pump you're seeing there and the battery technology, right, is pushing it through a hose. Now we have the entire tool, right, self-contained, and there's very little weight difference between, I think it's 5 pounds.
The handheld portions of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
So the actual tool, the new tool is actually a little bit heavier.
Slightly, not in the overall sense, but of the actual handheld portion.
Because
not
there's
including
more,
the backpack.
right, there's more included there. Right.
All right, seeing no other questions, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to waive the bid process and authorize the purchase of a replacement Hearst combi tool for $11,500 from Apollo Fire Equipment Sales, Romeo, Michigan, from the Jaws of Life account number 411-336-978.359. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Thanks, Chief. Next up is a recommendation to authorize participation in the State of Michigan Cooperative Purchasing Program for the purchase of two Ford F-250 pickup trucks from Gornall Ford in Woodhaven, Michigan, for the amount not to exceed $64,119 from pickup replacement account number 411-441-973.391. Have a motion?
Move to approve.
Support.
DPW Director Sigma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're requesting the purchase of two F-250 pickups that will be four-wheel drive with tow packages to haul our equipment and various employees along the job site. This will be replacing two pickups, one dated from 2004 and one from 2006. With mileage of 91,000 for the 2004 and 74,000 miles for the 2006.
Councilmember Smiley.
Hello, Mr. Sigmund.
Hi.
So this is for two
Yes.
trucks, and that seems like a pretty good price for two trucks.
That was a very reasonable price. In fact, we budget typically for the F-350s, but with the fleet that we have, we're looking that we can downsize because we won't necessarily need these for pushing snow. We have four other pickups for pushing snow, so we dropped the price, or we dropped the size of the truck down to an F-250.
Oh, okay.
For that reason.
The adopted budget was 90, and this brought it down quite a bit. Okay.
Yes.
Are they identical trucks?
The F-250s will be identical. Well, no, I'm sorry.
I thought one had an extended
No, one will
cab.
be an extended
Okay.
cab, and one will be the extended box, or so we'll have an 8-foot bed on one and an extended cab on the other one for various purposes. So it'll actually round out our fleet nicely.
Okay, so are they both about the same?
They're both about the same price. You know, the cab is I believe a little bit more, but overall
About that.
Yeah.
And then what will we do with the two older trucks?
So we didn't anticipate the drop in price because of that initially, but with that we could actually buy an F-150 with the remainder for this year, and what we would recommend that in a future budget.
You could just save the money.
We could save the money as well, and that's for council's decision. But we were happy to see that we could actually get an F-150 and utilize that. What we found over the last year with COVID was the need for seasonal work, to add vehicles because we're trying to separate folks a little bit with social distancing. So that would come in handy for that. But the added expense would be the $25,000 for the F-150. But that I have not recommended at this point. We would like to consider that in the future if that's the council's desire.
I don't think you answered my question.
No.
What are you going to do with the 04 and the 06?
So the 04 and the 06, I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
those will be, once we get the new vehicles in, we'll ask to auction them off.
Oh.
And they would go off.
We don't need them anywhere else. They don't rotate down.
No,
We'll sell them off.
this is end of life for those two vehicles.
Yeah, well, those are big miles, but for a truck, truck should get there and well beyond. So.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
So the F-150 you're gonna maybe request, that's not a replacement, that will be an addition?
That would be an additional vehicle, so we're still trying to work out that piece.
All right.
That's, yes, but for the two that we are recommending these as a need for the department, for sure.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Sigmund, yeah, I agree with Councilmember Smiley. $32,000 for an F-250 seems like, I hope it's got all its parts on it. I mean, it's probably parked in a lot waiting for a chip somewhere. Will we even get these?
It doesn't have the chip yet, but yes.
So we know what we're getting.
Yes.
And soon, this year, or when do we think?
It's still like 8 months out, 8-9 months.
8-9 months.
Yeah.
So will 90,000 cover the extra equipment that's going to be added to it, bed liners, lights, and other things, or how does that?
So the
part of the same budget?
We do have those. We have maintenance budgets that we could include for that if we chose to do the F-150. Otherwise, yeah, that would normally be included in that. We also typically ask for plows at this time too, and that took, for these two pickups, we don't anticipate utilizing them as plow trucks. So.
But the 90,000 could potentially include all the extras
Correct.
that we'll add on later.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Can you put a wing on a pickup truck? Okay. Deputy Mayor Rusnick?
Thank you. Tim, so with used cars and trucks at a premium right now, what are you expecting to get for those two at auction?
We haven't sold the pickups in a while, but yeah, there were 6,000 to 8,000 would be
Okay.
out of the question at that point.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Tim, did you just say that these two new vehicles would not have plows on them?
They would not.
No. Why?
So why? Yes, we're always looking for a well-rounded fleet, and we have 4 other vehicles that, 4 other pickups that have plows, and with those plows and our dumps with the wing plows, we really wouldn't have enough people to put in those vehicles anyway. So the plows for these 2 pickups are not recommended.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I got a motion and a second. Approve the recommendation to authorize participation in the State of Michigan Cooperative Purchasing Program for the purchase of 2 Ford F-250 pickup trucks from Garno Ford of Woodhaven, Michigan for amount not to exceed $64,119 from pickup replacement account number 411-441-973.391. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Don't go anywhere. New business item number 6 is the request for the approval of the local road improvement matching fund program cost participation agreement with the Road Commission of Oakland County in the amount of $37,140 with a local share of $50,000 and authorize DPW Director Tim Sigma to sign the agreement. The motion?
Support.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what you see before you tonight is the application grant for $37,140 from Oakland County as part of a local road improvement program. What we're utilizing this for is economic development and growth in the major roads, if you will. And we're utilizing monies that we typically use for crack sealing and just general road improvements. This has been a program since 2016, and it's been an effective program for us in trying to just better the commercial areas in town. So it's that's where the environment or the economic development increase is coming in play. It's a good program, and very, very little to apply for. We did ask for $50,000 match, just simply because we do put that into our roads in any way. So this match makes sense, and we'll be able to utilize the other $37,000 on the same roads.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the request for the approval of the local road improvement matching fund program cost participation agreement with the Road Commission of Oakland County in the amount of $37,140 with a local share of $50,000 and authorize DPW Director Tim Sigma to sign the agreement. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Passes. New business number 7 is a recommendation to increase the wages, salaries for non-union, full-time, and part-time employees by 3% each year on July 1st for fiscal years 2021, 2022, 2022-2023, and 2023-2024 is recommended by the Wage and Salary Committee. Do I have a motion? Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's right, okay. A recommendation to increase the wages, salaries of non-union, full-time, and part-time employees, excluding the city manager and city clerk, by 3% for fiscal year 2021-2022, increase the pay range maximum for non-union positions by 3% as recommended by the Wage and Salary Committee. I'm sorry for that.
So moved.
Support.
Good. City Manager Brown?
Yeah, so the background on this, we've had negotiations with various represented bargaining units and union contracts and negotiated pay raises for those groups. After getting to a certain point and seeing that was going to be the wage increases that we were going to provide for those employees, we feel it's appropriate at this time to bring to Wage and Salary a recommendation to do the 3% wage increases for non-union positions for fiscal year 21-22. and then also to increase the pay range maximums to keep in line with that increase of pay by the same 3%. That action was recommended by Wage and Salary at their meeting of this past Friday on July 9th, and they did unanimously recommend that that action for those two different pieces of work, the wage increases as well as the increase in the maximum range on those pay ranges for the affected employees. The city manager and the city clerk are excluded from this action because that's consistent with the fact that the two positions there are evaluated by mayor and council, and as such there would be some discretion on the salary adjustments for those positions as opposed to being in the lump sum 3% category with these other non-union positions. So that's the recommendation that's before you. We did have an adopted budget that is in line with those expenses, and we will not need to do a budget adjustment for that purpose. So if we get the approval from you, we'll make those changes for non-union employees.
Any questions? Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure exactly who to address this to, but I guess I'll start with City Manager Brown. So when we budget in April, we said 3% as a budget number. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to go to 3%. So I'm assuming the Wage and Salary Committee did some benchmarking, perhaps, of other communities and other municipalities, and if so, can you share a little bit of that? Because 3% to me, although I just retired, coming from industry, that's a pretty healthy raise over the last 10, any time in the last 10 years to get 3% is basically for just showing up to work, which I think that's what we're saying here, everybody gets 3%. Sounds pretty generous. And I know we budgeted that, but it doesn't mean we have to spend it. How would you respond to one of my constituents who asked me about a 3% raise?
Right, so you asked the question about whether Wage and Salary addressed that. That was discussed by Wage and Salary as far as doing an update to the marketplace to make sure that we're in line with our wage salary ranges and things of that nature, which would encompass these increases, because that's where we'll be with this increase on the maximum ranges as well. So we basically, administration committed to going through a process of figuring out where our wage ranges fit and whether they're in tune with the marketplace. In other words, are they above, are they beyond, are they less than, are they in line with? And we sometimes do that through a consultant, which is a cost factor for us, right? Administration suggested that we take a look at avoiding that to begin with and using what resources are available to us. There's a Michigan Municipal League salary survey that gets done every year, and then they publish a document that shows you what ranges of salary are out there in terms of the state of Michigan. So we're going to use that as the first piece of data. The second piece of data that we would use is looking at comparable cities and establishing comparable cities to compare ourselves to. So those two pieces of data would be used to see if we're in line or not with what other communities are doing, and make sure that we're in tune with the marketplace, if you will. So that's what was discussed at Wage and Salary and what we will be doing going forward to make sure that our costs are in line and appropriate in the marketplace in general. So we compare ourselves to other municipalities with those two pieces of data. And we've done that recently. The most recent time, I think, was just before I started, maybe 2016 was the last time that was done. So it's time that we do that, and that's what was discussed with Wage and Salary.
So it's just pure luck that budget was exactly 3%?
Yeah, there's other things that are budgeted in there, in that salary line. There's a variety of things that go in there, to try to guess what our expenses will be. But we do have approximately the dollar amount budgeted here that is necessary to cover this expense.
I guess I'll be paying a little more attention to the budget process next year if we budget it, and that's just automatically the raise everyone gets.
That's not the case.
Okay.
There's an estimate of that's done, and it comes in at what it comes in at. It's not treated as that's what we're going to do. That's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Berman?
The projected expense is 10% less than what we had budgeted then.
Right.
But everyone's getting a 3% raise, so.
Yeah. For 21, 22.
Right, that's the other thing that was discussed, is looking at the practices going forward in the second year, third year of this contract. We did not do it for the full 3-year contract period like we did with the other bargaining groups, the actual represented bargaining groups. Okay, so.
Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, my comments on this, I am in support of this. I do think investing in our employees, especially our non-union employees, is a smart move to be putting them at the same level as their union counterpart employees that are receiving a 3% raise. We should be treating them the same. The one comment I did want to note is with the clerk and the city manager being excluded from this action, I do think it's been close to a year since we did the review with them, and we should probably be getting that scheduled and moving forward.
Yeah, that's discussed in the report there, that's going to be something we anticipate handling in the coming weeks to a month. So,
especially now that we can see each other in person again.
Right, that was part of it.
Yep.
Yeah, I would like to do that remotely. So.
But I'm in support of this.
I think we're actually inside of a year right now, but we'd like to get back on that schedule of doing it early in the fiscal year. So.
All right, we got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to increase the wages, salaries of non-union, full-time, and part-time employees, excluding the city manager and city clerk, by 3% for the fiscal year 2021-2022, and increase the pay range maximums for non-union positions by 3% as recommended by the Wage and Salary Committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes. All right, moving on to new business number 8 is a recommendation to adopt the resolution dissolving local state of emergency and temporary open meetings act procedures in response to the lifting of all COVID-19 epidemic orders on gatherings and masking. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Very good. City Manager Brown?
Yeah, I don't have much to say on this other than what's covered in the report. With the lifting of the different masking and gatherings orders, we think it's appropriate for us to meet in person, and given that, we think that lifts the state of emergency in effect for the city of Wixom, and we're going to take the action to do that now. It was discussed with the attorney about that as to whether we needed to or whether we should, and I would say that it was a should, and based on that discussion, which is something I also agreed with. So that's why the action is before you tonight, to dissolve that local state of emergency, since we are meeting in person again, and consistent with our actions in terms of the way people are visiting in City Hall and those things. So.
Very good. Any questions? Councilmember Sher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So is there any other effect on our how the city operates right now? I know, or as I recall, when we did things like expanding outdoor seating for alcohol, the establishments that serve alcohol, we went to the state and the county and got all those approved. Do we have to rescind all those, or can they stay in their current state?
There's no requirement to lift those, and we feel that these businesses are going to continue to be impacted by that. There's still people that are hesitant to go out in public as much as they used to, and we think that there's going to be an impact, ongoing impact on businesses. So we're going to be looking at that and evaluating that, but there's no plan to cut back on any of those allowances at this time, just because of that. So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to adopt the resolution dissolving local state of emergency and temporary open meetings act procedures in response to the lifting of all COVID-19 epidemic orders on gatherings and masking. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. New business number 9 is a recommendation to reclassify the current grade 4 technology and support services librarian position to a grade 5 adult and support services librarian, approve the proposed position description, and approve a wage adjustment to bring the employee into the grade 5 salary range as recommended by the Wage and Salary Committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
With us tonight is the Wixom Public Library Director, Andrea Dickinson.
Good evening. Basically, I made this request. We have a librarian retiring at the end of July, and as she's retiring, we're looking at what do we really need today and redistributing responsibilities accordingly. So basically, this position is, along with the head of youth services, the only position that also supervises other employees in addition to myself. But it was not in the same salary range as that head of youth services position. So we're trying to get them in line and reflect the current needs of the library today. So all funds, wages, benefits, retirement costs, everything comes out of the library's budget, but we have an employee lease agreement with the city, so formal approval has to come from city council for that.
Any questions for library director? Oh, you're getting off easy. I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to reclassify the current grade 4 technology and support services librarian position to a grade 5 adult and support services librarian, approve the proposed position description, and approve a wage adjustment to bring the employee into the grade 5 salary range as recommended by the Wage and Salary Committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business number 10, charter language for spending. And Councilmember Gaucho, you requested this. Floor is yours.
Thank you. As we've kind of discussed or heard recently in the last few meetings, that August 10th is the deadline for submitting ballot proposals to be approved for the general election this fall. And something that I think many of us have talked about and heard about over the years is the spending threshold before items have to come to City Council to be approved. Currently it's at $3,000, and the charter was written in 1987, I believe. So that hasn't even kept up with inflation, which would put it a little over $7,000. And then on top of that, doesn't take into account at all that the fact that everything is more expensive nowadays than it was in 1987. So I'm motioning tonight to have the city manager bring ballot language for approval at the next city council meeting that would adjust chapter 12, section 12.1 of the city charter from $3,000 to $10,000 as a threshold before city council needs to be voting on spending or buying things.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion? Councilmember Berman?
I guess the only thing that I'd like to see is what are the other local municipalities' ranges at, just to make sure that we're in the same ballpark. I mean, I know a good friend of mine who's on Wyandotte City Council, I believe they have to approve anything up to above 500. So I just want to make sure that we're in the same ballpark. If 10,000 is the ballpark, then so be it. And I don't think there's anything that really, everything we spend money on is useful to our citizens, but I'd like to at least see some data to back up why we should be increasing that number. Because most things we see are above 10,000 anyways. How much is this truly going to clear up off of our agenda? So.
We can easily step into that and do some research as to the surrounding communities, try to get some comparables again and give you an idea of where they're at in relation to us. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like we've talked about this a little bit before in some of our budget sessions and our what's that thing we do? We should do more often. Goal setting sessions. Thank you. And I think we all agreed that this threshold is pretty low, and the only thing stopping us, I thought, and this is where my question is landing, was that we had a couple other things to help clean up the charter, and we were hoping to kind of get them all at once. Is that necessary, or does that save us the expense of getting something on the ballot? Try to get a little more cleanup of some outdated items like that.
Well, as was mentioned by Councilmember Gottschall here, that we're looking to finalize this at the meeting on the 27th. We can also check in and see if there was anything from prior goal setting sessions board that were discussed and see if there's anything else there that we need to take a look at. And I can advise council by way of a memo in the interim and see if there's any interest in expanding that further and doing potentially a couple of charter amendments. That's what we're essentially looking for, is a charter amendment as opposed to a
Right.
wholesale charter revision. So,
And that has to go to the folks, because,
right.
you know, when we reduce.
That's quite a process.
And-
The charter amendment process is less intensive, so.
I feel like it happens a lot. In fact, whenever something's under $5,000, I feel like, well, that wouldn't even be here if we, you know, on our list, there was like, I think there was 2 items at least tonight that wouldn't have been, you know, like the jaws of life.
Right.
You know, that was one, and without recapping.
The scanner,
you know,
the Kofax scanner system.
There you go, yeah.
There as well.
So those items wouldn't, you know,
Right.
wouldn't come to be decided here. Not that I mind, but, you know,
Right.
there's 11 items here tonight. So, that's all. I support this idea. I'm sorry, Councilman Gotcho, did you give an amount for the threshold that I'll raise it to?
10,000.
Oh, 10,000, okay. Yeah, we can talk about that part.
And you mentioned inflation brings you into the, you know, relative ballpark, at least $7,000. And you're not going to do it, you're probably not going to do that again in 2 years, right? So you're going to allow yourself a little bit of that extra leeway there for that kind of thing.
Good point, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the 10,000 was looking at what $3,000 is the equivalent of to 2021 dollars, and it was like a little over $7,100. And then again, like the city managers, that factoring that we're not going to increase it annually or every election cycle. So trying to plan for the future. And I think it's just like a speed thing as well. I don't think that there's a lot of disagreement since I've been up here on the lower dollar items. And it's usually printers and scanners and things that it doesn't make sense to me that we're holding up employees being able to do their jobs properly just for the sake of we need to rubber stamp something. So that's kind of what, it's more of an efficiency thing to me as well. It seems like a lot of the stuff that would even fall under 10,000, I think is like we buy new tables annually for the community center, that kind of stuff, where we do it every single year, so it just doesn't make sense to keep voting on the same thing. Clearly no one's really objective to that, so that's kind of the goal here. Thank you.
Councilmember Quinlan Fox?
Thank you. I support that. I think it's a great idea. I think it sounds like it would be helpful for administration. How will that impact other payments? So I know we don't have a warrant system here in Wixom because we don't see any of that. So how does that work now as far as bills that are paid? And would this impact that at all? I'm guessing no, but.
No, there would be no impact on how the bills are paid. It would just be that they could expedite the purchase a little quicker, not having to go through the process of coming to council, or in some cases having to bid out something that's $5,000. You know, it would increase that limit of when we would have to go out to bid also.
Okay.
So it's just more efficient.
Would speed it up just in a like fashion as the purchases, right? Because if we have to come to council, get approval for the purchase, then that delays the billing and everything else, right? So that would just, it would be a like improvement in the speed of things, I guess, is how I would put it.
Okay, so other payments that are made, or what have you, whatever the city's bills are
Right.
that they have to pay, that just goes through the finance department and it's either paid with a check.
Right.
Or
Correct.
it's electronically paid.
Correct. Yeah, each department puts in their own purchase orders, which are approved by their department heads, and then that in turn rolls through the finance department for issuance of checks.
And that threshold, there is no threshold on that?
No.
Okay.
So there's administrative costs associated with any of this, as Marilyn touched on, right? If you're going to buy something that costs $5,000 and do a full-scale bid process for it, is it worth it on a purchase of $5,000 because we have to put in X amount of time to make a bid process work? That's a situation where it's going to save us some time and as well as cost, right? Just from an administrative standpoint. So it would streamline things from that standpoint. And then other than that, the payments much the same way, right? So like when we go through that purchase order approval process, right now, when I'm doing final approval on things that are put in within my department, as an example, I have to make sure to go back, we get council approval for something that costs $5,000, and there's another period of time somebody had to spend time documenting council action from October of 2020 that allowed us to make that purchase or that installment purchase or that annual purchase if it was approved in that fashion, right? So if that's another step where there'd be less of that because we just don't have as many coming to council on these smaller purchase amounts when we have the increase from 3,000 to potentially 10,000. So
That makes sense.
Right.
I guess part of my question is, so right now, if you have a P-card expense or an employee reimbursement or what have you, and it's $5,000, is
Right.
that, does each department director have a threshold of what they can approve? Or does that, like, over a certain amount go to you, Steve? or
no, it will not
else?
impact that. Our processes are such that the individual department has are overseeing their expenditures, and it doesn't come to me over a certain dollar amount. There's no threshold like that. So,
Thank you.
no.
Councilmember Sheriff?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to reiterate what I think I heard. It's not about council taking a long time. It's about the city moving faster. Although there are expenses when things come to council, all the documentation that has to be put together, and that takes time. And we heard about body-worn cameras and how much it costs to have clerical folks working on that. So the less clerical documentation has to come to council. That's good for the city. It's not about how much time we take up here, because I'll look at $500 or whatever it is. And I also lost my last comment. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate because I remember HVAC repairs we've had to do before were $5,000 for a heat exchanger, and I think it was silly that you had to come to us for it. Or do the emergency replacement and then come to council and notify us of the emergency replacement. So I think I'm in favor of it. I am in favor of a broader set of charter amendments, though. If we're going to go with the lawyer's time as well as going through the ballot language, and we've been talking for, what is it now, 9 years about the charter cap being set at something very low.
It's been, I've got minutes here from 2005 that it's exactly what we're talking about here.
So yeah, I'd be in favor of seeing some additional of those items that we've been talking about for many years addressed by the lawyers. We do some extent.
Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. I agree. There are a number of things that I would like to see changed in the charter, but I figured, we're coming up on the deadline, and rather than jumping into a deep discussion where everybody might not agree, this was kind of like the low-hanging fruit to me, where generally everyone seems to agree on this council and previous councils. So that was the hope here, is get this one done, and then I know we've had this long conversation about, do we do a full charter amendment or revision, and that all goes up, but it seems over the past few election cycles, other cities nearby have just done single changes, and so you have to vote on multiple things, and I think that's where we would ultimately kind of end up. So I didn't want to, I understand that we have one more meeting before the deadline. That's why I didn't opt to do a full scale, here's my ideas thing. It was more just, let's do what we can do to speed up life a little bit for everybody around here.
Let's get one in.
Quit talking about it.
Madam Clerk, if we do this on the 27th, do we have enough time to get everything taken care of and get it up to Lansing and have it?
Yeah, honestly, it makes me really nervous because you have to get approval from the governor, the attorney general. But I looked back at the minutes from a year ago right now, and you did approve a proposal or a ballot language at the last meeting in July, and the city attorney pushed it through in Lansing, and we did get it. I have notes, an email from the Bureau of Elections, because I was so nervous. I submitted it to them on the deadline day at 11:30, and I made them send me something back in writing saying they got it, we met the deadline by 4 o'clock, and we were good to go.
Okay.
It does make me nervous, but we did it last year, so I'm sure we can do it again.
And the clerk's point is that it's an aggressive schedule at this point, right? And that's where we had to have some people that had some established relationships with people following up on it to make sure that things were getting done in a very, very timely fashion. And we'll be in that same kind of position this time, but hopefully we can get it done again. So.
Yeah, well, That's what's giving me the heartburn is the time thing, because I do agree, although I'm having a hard time with $10,000, but I do agree we have to change something. But, you know, looking back, I've got minutes here from an April 12, 2005 meeting where they talked about the exact same thing, raising it and doing charter amendments, and it keeps getting pushed down the road and pushed down the road and pushed down the road. So I guess my feeling on this is let's get this one done, and let's get a task force up and let's do these charter amendments. I mean, we've been kicking charter amendments down the road for 16 years now. None of us up here on this, but it's been going on a long time. We need to get it done. So if there's no other questions, I've got a motion and a second to approve the motion that Councilmember Gotcho is going to read.
Motion was to have the city manager bring ballot language for approval at the next city council meeting that would adjust Chapter 12, Section 12.1 of the city charter from $3,000 to $10,000 as a spending threshold.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right, new business number 11 is a presentation on the Pacer ratings of the roads of Wixom. Again, Councilmember Gotcho, you requested this. The floor is yours.
I'm going to tag my partner in here.
All right, DPW Director Sigma. Just a presentation.
You got it.
Wanted to bring up Mike Darga as well. We have a Pacer. There was some questions on what Pacer ratings were, and there are a number of new faces on council right now. So we thought we'd talk about that just a little bit. Just the last few weeks, we had gone through our DPW, went through all the roads and graded them once again, and we feel that it's important to know what the Pacer ratings are and the scales that we're looking at, but then also you know, the condition of our roads. So with that, I'd like to bring up Mike Darga.
Hello. Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Let's see here.
That was that very
Usually we only get to see like a quarter size of Mike.
That's right.
So, talking about the Pacer ratings, which is, Pacer stands for Pavement Surface Evaluation and Rating. It is a visual rating of the roads. Currently, the Pacer ratings are done by city staff driving the roads. I think 2 guys from the DPW are certified for this. They go through, they look at the roads, and they rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. And with 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. 10 is pretty much a brand new road. 1 needs a complete reconstruction. Typical life of a road, you're probably looking at 15, 20 years before you really need to do something with it. So you're looking at your Pacer ratings are usually grouped together. 8, 9, 10s are usually good. 5, 6, 7, you're fair, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, you're starting to get into the poor conditions. So as you move down the rating, of course, prices of maintaining the roads goes up. So simple routine maintenance for a 8, 9, 10 would just be, crack sealing, snow plowing, addressing drainage problems. We just start getting into the 5, 6, 7s. You're looking at, crack sealing, mill and overlay, just like the top 1.5 inches, milled off the top of the road, a new 1.5 inches on it. You get a nice new road, pretty cheap, but then once you start dropping down, a 4 can kind of jump up into the good category too. It's just when you start getting into 4s, you're doing more pavement-based repairs. So the prices of a 4 is just more than a 5.
Hey, Mike?
Yep.
Just You said a complete reconstruction, you'll get about 15 years out of a road. When you do the non-structural overlay, what do you figure you'll get out of that?
You're probably looking at, 5 to 10.
So extensive life, it's extensive, it just pushes
Yeah.
out that.
Yeah. Typically, so we go through and overlay a road, 1.5 inches. Usually, like 1.5 inches, within a year and a half or so, 2 winters, you're gonna start seeing cracks coming through again. So it's important to get out there and do your maintenance at that point, to do your crack sealing, so it's cheaper to take care of, in the future. So just looking at how roads, start back up here. So 9s and 10s are excellent, new to excellent. You really don't have much work to do to those roads. Just put them on your crack sealing programs, address any situations that come up. So 8s and 7s, you're still doing your crack sealing, pretty cheap. So when we start getting down to our 6 and 5, that's really where you start doing some real work to these roads, where seal coating, you get a road as a 6, it can jump back up to an 8 if you do a seal coat, but all you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it at that point. You're just buying time before you have to do a real change to the road. Usually like a 5, your thin overlay, that's where I was talking about the 1.5 inch overlay. You look at that, you go from a 5, you're jumping back up to a 9. So that it's kind of important in your 5s and 4s to really address your problem. So if you're dropping down to the 4s, you might not be doing that 1.5 inch overlay. You might be doing, the full 3 inches of a road, or you could, take 2 inches off. So you're getting into more of the structural overlay. So at that point there, you'll definitely get 10 years out of your road, 10 to 15 there, instead of your, 5 to 10 with your 1.5 inch overlay. So then once you get down to the 3, then you're really cutting out bad sections just to get your overlays on there. So it's just real important to address your roads when they get to a 3. So then we get down to the 2 and 1s. It's a horrible road, fails, and then you got to essentially replace it, rebuild it. Then you're jumping back up to your 10, but it's a lot of money to do that. So looking at where the state of Michigan is, the first one here is back in 2008. I don't know if you guys can see it. Go ahead with that. So we have the green is the good, red is poor, yellow is fair. So so this is back in 2008, and the other one here is in 2020. You can see the amount of poor roads, went from 30% to about 42.4%. So overall, the state of Michigan, the roads are, getting poor. The green color there, the good roads, they're staying about the same. So a lot of the, what do we have here? A lot of the fair roads are just, turning into poor. And the exact same thing's happening here. This is back in 2008, the city's PACER ratings. I think their average rating at that point was like 6.7. Now in 2021, I think we're down to about a 3. And a lot of that is because you've just added on the VCA roads, which were newer roads and high score. So that kind of, you're dropping down to the right below a 3. 4. Oh, 4. 4? Oh, okay. So looking forward in the future here, we're looking at, next summer, we have, a good mix of projects here in the next 4 years. Maybe 2 years, actually. So we've got industrial concrete repairs on some of the roads. Maple Run 2, off Maple Road there, we're looking at redoing. West Maple Road is set to be redone from Wixom to Beck in 2023. And also Grand River from Wixom Road to Napier. Road Commission will be doing that. And then we've got 2024, we're looking at Cliffs on Moon Lake and Courts of Highgate. And so 2 years ago, we redid, you know, Highgate of the Green and Highgate of the Lake. But we didn't get to the courts, just I think because of the magnitude of the project, which is too much for your budget. So now we got to get back to the courts of Highgate to, you know, get that whole section kind of, you know, upgrade the roads there. And it works out good with Cliffs on the Lake because those are kind of off the Lake Road. You know, they're kind of, hopefully we can get some, you know, good prices having two projects pretty close together. Same type of work, which is always important. I think that's pretty much all we want to cover at this point.
So part of our goals typically are to hit like the 5, right mid level, if you will, with the Phaser ratings, and Mike and I talked about that. So we're reaching that goal. We're starting to fall behind on it just a little, and that's where Keenan kind of picked up on that. We're on total average of our roads is now about 4.8, and we're just below the 5, which if we improve Maple Run and you know, the concrete roads, that will bring us, we're hoping, back up to our levels. But as a general rule, both in the state and Wixom, we're starting to go lower and lower on our Phaser ratings, which means that our roads are degrading quicker than we can repair them, and that's where the concern from, I think, was brought up. So with that, we can question the mayor's looking there.
Councilmember Geisel.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind going back to the Wixom pie chart, I'd appreciate it.
Let's go back to that.
So, I mean, this is something that had kind of been discussed a number of years ago, and then something that Mr. Sigma and I discussed as well. Is in the past, HRC had provided us with an assessment of if we invested X amount of dollars, you would expect the rating to go up to whatever, sort of as an ROI calculation, essentially. You can obviously see the green in 2008 has essentially become the equivalent of the red now. So it illustrates what I was touching on without the data a few weeks ago when I first brought it up, but it illustrates the point that our roads are getting worse. We're not essentially treading water as best as we could. And something that was pointed out was our rating now is what it is with the inclusion of the new developments across the street, which are all essentially 9s and 10s at this point. Do you know offhand, if those weren't included, what we would look like?
I did not run that.
Okay.
No.
It'd be safe to say it'd be lower, though.
It would be definitely lower. The 2019 numbers that we did were lower than the 2021 numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even our average now is sort of like a beefed up average because we've been building new neighborhoods, not because we've been fixing existing poor roads. So that's, I know, going back to some of the comments that I appreciated last time to be addressed was a presentation and dollar amounts, and maybe we just wait until the current local road millage expires and we increase it in a few years. And this is a part of the reason why I'd like to address it now is that pie chart. I mean, that is bad as it is, and I wouldn't want to see it 6 years from now, is it? When local roads comes up again. So that's kind of where I came from. I know the number I threw out last time was 3/4 of 1 mil as in supplemental increase. And that's sort of, I guess, up for debate if there's an appetite amongst council to even do something. So I'll wait to, I guess, hear other feedback, and then might have a motion.
Well, I'll throw in, you know, we are allowed up to 3.5 mils every year. And for the past 3 or 4 years of budget, we've only used 3 mils. We could ask everybody to sharpen their pencils a little bit and maybe get it down to where we use 2.7 of the mills for the budget, and then we've got our 3/4 of a mill right there that we can take and put it directly into the roads. That's just, I mean, with that way we still got it, the money will be going there, and we'll be making an effort to fix the roads.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Yeah, so, Marilyn, what is the current sunset of the local road millage? Is it 2 years from now?
The local road millage, the last time we'll levy it is 2025.
2025, so pretty soon.
Mhm.
So that might be one way to do it in the interim, and then when it does expire, see if we can get a continuation or more on the continuation. I'd be open to that, definitely. And can ARPA funding be used for infrastructure roads, local roads?
No, just water and sewer.
Just water and sewer. Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you. It certainly makes sense that, you know, it's an expensive item to redo the roads, and that was what would hold us back. But actually, would more money get the job done, actually? I mean, I know it's hard. I once spoke to the Oakland County, I forgot his name, but he said, you know, if we had the state of Michigan had every penny it needed right now to do roads, it still couldn't get done because there's a lot of manpower and equipment and involved. So you guys got a plan for the next 4 years, and you know, we'll just go along with the idea that it's been budgeted and that will work for our budget currently. Will more funds make anything happen faster or add to that list?
That would increase, or we could shorten up our time spans to bring the level of the roads back.
You could get more done with
yes,
more funds
with more
in that
funds.
same time. Okay.
But, and I think Keenan alluded to it earlier, with the PASER ratings that we have, we can put this into some software that HRC can help us with that would give us that return on investment, if you will, so that, you know, if you increased it by, say, $500,000 a year, we would get this type of scenario over time. And if we increased it by $750,000 per year, we would get X much more in terms of the PASER rating. So we could, I hope I'm not speaking on the terms right, but you know, we had talked about that, so we could probably do that within the next couple of weeks. So we could present that next time.
Okay. Thanks, real quick. So, and also, if I recall from this presentation, you know, maybe my first year, so the PASER rating isn't just about, you know, grading, you know, the roads. It's also about, you know, there's a philosophy that comes along with prioritizing. Like it's better to try to save the 4 and 5s than it is to work on that 1 and 2, because that 1 and 2, there's no hope for it. You gotta.
That's
okay.
That's
so we can,
right.
and also kind of tied in with that is we've got some 1s and 2s in the city, and they're kind of like they're gonna take a lot of effort and resources to get them done, and they kind of been put down because they're more in the industrial areas and they're kind of like priority-wise they've been neglected, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't. They're within the sequence, and we do plan to make them or make those repairs. But yes, they're within the cycle, and we would have to expend much more to bring them up to a 10 rather than bring the 4s and 5s like they're saying. So we're doing the mix of fixes. So we're taking a little bit of all of that and, you know, kind of shortening our 10-year projects accordingly to make that work. If we would add you know, funds for this. So we have a 10-year plan currently, and within the 10-year plan, we don't have all of our 4s and 5s in yet.
Oh, okay.
That's
Other than, is there anything else besides funding? And I grant you that's probably the biggest thing that is holding it back, or what else could we do besides? allocate more funds towards it to get it to happen faster.
Definitely, yeah, funding will make it happen faster. It is a plan that we're working within our budgets, and we feel that it's, from that perspective, right now it's adequate. We are concerned that the 4s and 5s will become 3s and 4s in the future. Now that 4s between 6 and 3, if you will, that takes a longer time period. So we have time to work on these things.
Yeah, you're doing what you can with what we have. And yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
Councilmember Berman.
My curiosity would be is if you, I'm sure you have said list of what neighborhoods and what streets are what numbers currently, and just driving through. So for example, I know Maple Run, my neighborhood, I can see that it needs some work, and I think we stopped doing the crack sealing there a few years ago. So for comparison, what number is Maple Run?
So Maple Run's right around the 3.
Okay, and then I assume like Maple Road between Wixom Road that was replaced a few years ago, that was probably a 1 or 2 because that was just like a roller coaster probably.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Which should kind of be where West Maple is becoming now, a 1 or 2, because that's going to.
Yes.
Okay.
East side.
Yeah, I think West Maple is 3s and 2s in 2019.
Okay. Well, I do, I would support us eventually budgeting more money towards this. I'm not sure that I feel comfortable with we could necessarily ask our department heads to sharpen their pencils much more. Us just going through this last budget, I feel like all of our departments are running pretty lean as they are now. I don't see, in my eyes, what we could cut, but I would feel comfortable using that extra millage room we have to putting towards the roads going forward in future budgets. But I'd like to see more of an idea of what you think you need to make this work. If we were to use that extra $500,000 we have left in the millage, put it at the local roads, would that make the change you're looking, or do you need more money than that?
We would utilize whatever funds from on that one. It's, yeah.
That $500,000 would be approximately $386,000.
I think Cliff, I think that was about 450,000 to overlay that. You're looking size wise. So you could definitely not start knocking off some small cul-de-sacs or here and there. That'll help bring up those scores.
I'd like to try to add a little bit of information on here that I want to kind of throw some cold water on this to some extent. But lack of action is going to worsen things as well, right? I'm not arguing that the action is not warranted, but one thing to keep in mind is we're kind of going to a buzzsaw of increasing costs on road improvement projects. So, let's say we come up with an additional $500,000 that we're going to put onto roads on an annual basis. That might not buy the impact that it would have a few years ago because the costs are really increasing pretty heavily right now. So just I temper your enthusiasm, or I seek to temper your enthusiasm in terms of what that impact might be in terms of the PASER rating. It might not be what we might hope it would be, but by the same token, as we're spending the monies that we currently have allocated, it's going to have less of an impact as well, and the impact on the PASER ratings could be worsened by that as well, which doesn't, like I said, it doesn't. I'm not making an argument against the case for additional monies on the roads. I'm just arguing that there would be a little bit of a diluting of the impact that you might see normally because of these cost increase. I don't know if Mike wants to argue with me or bolster that case. So,
I mean, it's hard right now to estimate construction projects. One thing the city's doing though is, bidding the projects early, January, February, get them on the books for the contractors early in the year. Typically, when subdivisions, construction doesn't start till June after school's out. But we are bidding them early to get the best price available.
yeah, we're going to be trying to be smart about it, but I'm just warning, there could be some impacts in the future here with increasing costs on paving, so.
And we're not sure what that number is at
Right.
this time. We're thinking this next couple of years, well, with COVID and everything, we want to know that before we go back on an increase, for the voters, really. Just trying to buy a year or two until we understand that. I think that's what you're getting at, is that right?
Right. Yeah, I think there's going to be a cost factor increase that's going to be in play here. With what's happening with money that's been injected into the economy, I think there's going to be a price to pay and the inflationary side of things that we don't know yet.
Councilmember Gatto?
Thank you. So I'm trying to, I guess, think how to word a motion here, because I think I would appreciate, I'm not sure if anybody else would, seeing the information from HRC in terms of the ROI calculations essentially for different additional dollar amounts, not what we're spending now, but if we add on X, we'll get whatever. And I'm not sure the length of time, maybe it could be done before the next meeting, but I think we have, a few people thrown out different potential options. I don't think one of the options should be not to spend any money, because it might not make as big of an impact, because the roads are getting worse all the time, if that makes sense. So even if we're bringing in more money so we can do more smaller projects, like Mr. Sigmund was saying, the mix of fixes, then that's helpful. It doesn't mean that, hey, we're only gonna bring in 500,000, that doesn't buy us a new Loon Lake Road. No, but it can buy us cul-de-sacs, it can help kind of save what we have, which is the state we're in. So I guess, I'm not sure if we would need a motion to get the HRC thing for the next meeting, but I don't want to get yelled at, but I would almost make a motion that we have more ballot language for approval at the next council meeting for an additional millage of an indeterminate amount. I guess just we can fill in the blank if we want to at the next meeting, if the information comes back that it would be helpful, and then we can talk more about funding. I guess I would just be leery of not doing anything. As a part of the language as well could be to sunset that in accordance with our local road millage. That way it's not in addition to whatever happens, it just sunsets with it, and then we can adjust accordingly at the next local road millage.
Yep. Can we get that done by next meeting? Because if we can't, then there's no sense in making a motion,
Okay.
So.
That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
You said 350,000
Yeah, it's approximately,
would be your max.
well, a half a mil. If we use the 3 mils for the budget, we're allowed to go up to 3.5, so that would give us a half a mil, which would be approximately 386.
We've kind of ranged, I've said asking for 3/4 of a mil. If it becomes ballot language, realistically, we can ask for any amount we have. So maybe if your analysis could have a few different points for us to figure out if there is some amount the majority agrees on or whatever, but yeah, I think we have that half a mil floating out there now in our operating millage that isn't being used. Maybe there are reductions, maybe there aren't, maybe we need to use that half and ask for a 1/4 or what have you, so. Kind of a mix of fixes when it comes to funding too, so.
Councilmember Grenell Fox.
So I do support getting that report, that ROI report. Could we also get something then from finance or the manager's office to show us how much money we would have available based on the available millage, and then what we might need, or how, if you have any ideas of how we could get that other dollar amount based on the documents that we got, the report we got from you, so we could kind of marry up the two and see. And then As far as the, and this might be way out there, but as far as the American Rescue Plan, is there any way, potentially, that we could use general fund money that's gonna be freed up with that money to spend it on this? Or do we not even know that yet?
Yeah, that, I would reference that as a possibility, right? So, you know, that depending on what we end up being able to spend that ARPA funding on.
So it's something we can look at?
It's something we can certainly look at, yes. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of point out on, the way I understand the report that's going to get generated by HRC, we're looking at ability to do basically scenarios, right? So you could do in a scenario at what the funding of a $500,000 would equate to. It's let's say $386,000 for that. If it's a full mill, that's going to take us up to $732,000 that would be available. The way I saw the report that I think we're referencing is you'd have scenarios, right? If we spend X amount of dollars, if we maintain the status quo, our PASER rating is going to do this. If you increase spending by $386,000, that's the second level, that's a blue colored line, and it's going to raise the PASER rating to this range over the period of time, and so on and so forth. So that's what we would do, right, to provide some different information for you to take a look at and evaluate. So that's what that report can do.
Yeah, you'll have a starting, average PASER rating, and kind of where you finish.
Right, at that status quo, right? And then if you spend more, it'll be a slightly higher PASER rating. If you spend that much more, it's going to be a higher PASER rating, and that gives you an idea of what kind of an impact you might be able to buy. There's a bunch of variables in there that we're extrapolating out into the future, but we can do some analysis on that and provide some information for you. So,
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you. While you're making charts, since you did such a good job, Adam, actually, hopefully this won't be difficult. I appreciate the chart you showed 2008 versus 2021. But I also, like, where are we going to and from in the past 4 or 5 years? You know, are we on a kind of lower trajectory, or are we getting better even slightly? You said we were behind, but I don't know if that means just scheduling.
We're gradually declining.
We are still on the decline.
Yep, that's the 2008 numbers that we had were an average of 6.7. And we're now at a 4.8 overall. And
right, but
that's
so it went down, but is it, we talked about this a couple of years ago, right. We're still tracking down.
Tracking
Next year it'll be 4.0. Next year it'll be 3.9. I mean.
Well, that's what those numbers.
Okay, okay.
So, yeah, with that though, I mean, another piece that 20 years ago, we, as the city, connected to water and sewer. The developments that went in, you're looking at Wildwood and the Hillsboroughs and all of Wexford Muse. Hillsborough was completed basically, Hidden Creek was completed, but you had all of Wexford that went in, all of Wildwood, Maple Runs. That was just before that as well. So, I mean, you start thinking about the progress in subdivisions that have gone on in the last 20 years. It's a 20-year road. So, that's what, we're keeping in mind, and that's where, most of our 51 miles is in those areas. So, there's, what, 10 miles worth of major roads, so that's back in Potter and West Maple, West Road. Those are all majors, and then the rest of them are local roads, and those are in our subdivisions primarily.
There's about 40 miles of local roads.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I
don't know if there has been.
Okay. I motion that the city manager bring ballot language for proposal at the next city council meeting regarding additional millage funding for local roads to sunset in accordance with our existing local road millage.
Okay, I've got a motion and a support.
I wasn't sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Do we have any other? Councilmember Berman?
I'm all for information, but I'm not comfortable with moving forward with ballot language at this time. I think we need more information before we're discussing ballot language that's going to increase taxes on our community.
I concur with that.
Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Berman and Deputy Mayor Resnick. The time to have these conversations about trade-offs, which I would like to have, is at the budgeting session, where we talk about some of the other major project expenditures we have. And I'm just going to throw this out there, but we have $600,000 in for Habitat Trail refurbishment. Not that that's not important, but at some point we have to prioritize, and we can't have everything. And I think the time to have this conversation is, so it's good to get information now, but the time to do ballot work and those things is during the budget session when we understand what we really need and we've prioritized and made those trade-offs. Thank you.
Councilmember Gatchell?
Thank you. I guess point out that we can have the information before we vote on ballot language formally, and it might be the case that we don't even entertain the ballot language, so it doesn't go on the ballot. That's kind of the point, is just in case the presentation at the next meeting, the numbers do dictate or fall in line with what the majority would feel up here, then the language is prepared because we understand the timeline we're up against. So it's bringing the language for discussion, and we will have the information, we've been assured, before the next meeting. So it's just making sure we're prepared in case, not that we're going to forge ahead with putting something on the ballot regardless of whatever the data says.
Councilmember Grumman-Fox?
Just a follow-up question through the mayor. So are you talking about ballot language for this for August?
It'd be November.
Because I don't see how we could possibly get all this information. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but it doesn't seem like we would have enough time to get something on the ballot for November and get all the data, the financial data and the data on the roads in time, or would we? I mean, if it's possible, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, it's an aggressive time frame regardless, but it's been done before. So I can't say that we can't do it. So.
Madam Clerk, did you get the motion by Councilmember Gatchell?
Yes.
Okay. I've got a motion and a second to the motion made by Councilmember Gatchell. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Mayor Beagle?
No.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
No?
Councilmember Behrman?
No.
Councilmember Gatchell?
Yes.
Councilmember Grumman-Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp?
Nay.
Councilmember Smiley?
No.
5 no, 2 yes.
I would still like to go through with the reporting and stuff like that. We can move on. Thank you. Next up is the second call to the public. I'll read the rules of the call to the public again. The rules are as follows. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reasoning for addressing the council. And all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the second call to the public? Whatever's on your mind.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Jen Hines. I am a new resident of the city of Wixom. I've been here just over a year, and my reason for addressing the council this evening is because I am a member of the Hickory Hills Association. and as of last week, I'm the new president of the association. And after multiple failed attempts to receive clarification from the city manager's office about an ordinance 18.13.140, I'm just trying to get some clarification, trying to understand the ordinance. Some of my neighbors and association members have received tickets for having their boats docked on a dock that has been there for 70 plus years. Those people that received the tickets, there were 2 boats put on docks, which is a fraction of how many have been there in past years. So we're just trying to understand why this is happening this year and get some clarification on the ordinance. And I wasn't sure if the council was aware of all the discord that has been happening on Loon Lake, but it does seem that multiple members of Wixom City do know of it. And again, just looking for some clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else to the second call to the public?
My name is Katie Burton, formerly Peterson. I recognize quite a few faces up here, even though this is my very first Wixom City Council meeting. Unlike Jen, I have been a resident of Wixom my entire life. I was raised in the Birch Park subdivision, and I now live in the Hickory Hills Association. I'm a little sad and upset that my city is not the friendly city that I thought it was when I got married and started a family and moved from my parents' home. I never would have thought that Loon Lake would become an issue, that Birch Park versus Hickory Hills versus what I call cut-through salt, but that's Loon Lake Woods versus the Hopkins Saltwood Channel. Like, I guess I'm also here in support of Jen. I'm curious what the rules are. Is there one rule for the whole lake? Are you allowed to moor your boats the way some people do? And that's the Finn Camp, that's Birch Park, it's Hickory Hills. Where would one go to find this information so that you're not getting ticketed, you're not getting a misdemeanor? Is there anyone that can answer that, or am I just making a statement?
You're just making a statement.
Okay. Let it be known there are some really sad residents, and if anyone would like to ask me questions, I'm at 2770 Hillcrest. I would love to share my views and my stories. Yes.
Can you, I'm unaware of what's going on. Can you share that with me?
You know, my understanding, and this is all hearsay, right? This is not, I've witnessed everything, but I'm familiar with Birch Park because I lived there for 30 years, and they have an association waterfront lake where those that pay dues can go. It's not open to anyone. It's to the Birch Park residents. There's also homes of Birch Park that have waterfront access. I'm sure they pay their taxes, and never before has it been a problem for certain people in Birch Park, and I'm not sure if they're just grandfathered in, they take their chances. They will moor their boats in front of this association. So no one technically owns it except the association. And then there's a dock off Birch Park that is not owned by a resident, but there's a dock that's, you know, it has a boat on it. Well, now that I'm now at the Hickory Hills, when I'm taking my kids to the beach, I'm hearing that my neighbors are getting ticketed and they're no longer putting their boats in because it seems that that side of the lake has been targeted for a particular reason. And I'm not certain what this is, but we're a small business, my family is, and we were so excited to purchase a used pontoon boat for my kids. And now we can't necessarily launch it every time because heaven forbid, I'm a woman and launching a boat is not my thing. And the opportunity to leave it there that others seem to be able to utilize around the lake is not an option to me, because a $500 misdemeanor would be very difficult for my family. And so if it's all right for one association, whether it's a Bing Camp that's been there longer than any of us, to moor their boats, which I think the technical definition of mooring is not on a dock, but floating. I just would like to know where one could find the rules, because it seems that things are in play that are shifting, and there's no longer one rule for one lake. DNR has been thrown about with people, wiping out wetlands that they were never supposed to be waterfront, and it would just be nice to have a cohesive unit in Wixom, because that lake is not that large, and with the way the world is, Wixom should be a nice place to have your kids at the lake.
Yeah, I was unaware that mooring had even begun, I guess. I grew up on Hillcrest as a kid, and so I remember going down to the beach and everything with friends, and there were never boats out in front of the beach or off the slide.
A couple, maybe last year, I noticed that there were 2 docks, the way Birch Park has had them, off to the side on the waterfront, and they had some boats docked on it. Now, through Birch Park, because my parents still live there, Hickory Hills, I have friends in the channel, everyone seems to have a different understanding of what the rules are, how many square footage of lakefront gives you what kind of access to how many boats. 2 boats on a dock is okay, more than that could be considered a marina. The DNR has very strict rules, I guess, about marinas. This is all totally above my pay grade. I just know that it's affecting the cohesiveness of Wixom, and I don't think that's okay.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Everything should be
one rule
applied across the board,
Agreed.
across all the lakefront neighborhoods. I wasn't aware that anybody had been mooring at all, so it's news to me, and it might be something that they've just decided we're going to do. I'm not sure if they've come to the city or not. That'll be for the administration to look into.
And again, when I say mooring, I don't know the legal definition. I'm using it like a boat is not attached to a dock that's land-based. Does that make sense? You have to wade through?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So.
One way or the other, though, I don't know that the city's ever granted any boat slips for non-lakefront owners for any of the neighborhoods at all.
My understanding was, this dates myself, what's the cut yourself?
Loon Lake Woods.
Loon Lake Woods. When they went in, certain houses were not lakefront. They were not able to have a marina. It was kind of a big deal because those that know Wixom know there's a pretty significant price value in homes for the Loon Lake Woods versus Birch Park sub. And so there was a laugh that people wanted to maybe buy a marina, and it didn't happen because the DNR, I believe it was the DNR, said that's not the size lake that it needs to be, or whatever the rules were. And so, again, I'm just trying to find out what the rules are and maybe have it applied across the board. Because if Hickory Hills is getting tickets, I mean, I hate to say it to people that I grew up with, but Birch Park should be getting tickets too. Yep. So, I mean, fair is fair.
It's something that I was at least unaware of. I'm not sure about other council members, but I appreciate both of you coming out tonight to bring it to our attention, because we're not aware of everything that happens in the city. So,
well,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, just go ahead.
Oh, I guess I just had one further question of you.
Yeah.
Who is it? Our police department that's issuing the tickets, or is it Oakland County? Is it the DNR?
I am not certain because I have not gotten I have not gotten a ticket. It has, Jen, do you happen to know that answer?
It's the city police
It's
department.
okay, the city police.
Okay. That was just my question, and I would assume that the city police department is responding to complaints, and that's why they're ending up out there?
Well, word on the street has it, someone in Birch Park is connected through a zoning department with people in the city, and he might not like the boats. Again, I don't care about people's feelings. I'm just looking to know what it might be.
I'm sure we can get some clarification on what the rules are.
Mr. Behrman, this was a cooperative event between the police department and Mr. Pike from the building department. The police department was involved for the sole reason that accessing certain databases, Mr. Pike was unable to do so.
Understood. Thank you.
Anybody else for the call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the second call to the public and move on to city manager's comments. City Manager Brown.
So city manager update, we talked about the vaccination clinics that have been held in the city. We've had multiple clinics that have been held, some in cooperation with the Ready Nursing Solutions, which is a partner of Oakland County through their public health department, and also directly with the county public health department. The most recent ones were held on June 22nd and June 24th, and we have another scheduled for this week on July 15th. And I was unable to get verification of a single number, so that's why I used the approximately 100 number in the update. But we are in that neighborhood of about 100 vaccinations. It's a pretty safe assumption that that's the vicinity that we're in. And the latest request to do another vaccination clinic at the Village Apartments on July 15th was just kind of finalized with Oakland County Health and Human Services. So we're going to be proceeding with another clinic on the 15th with the Village. As some of you may know, Fred Mattson is the property manager with Edward Rose that handles the Village. He's always very cooperative in terms of participating in these kind of things when we want to do something that's a public outreach. We're just attempting to provide more vaccination opportunities to people on a more convenient basis because you're down to the vaccine reluctant population essentially. So that's where we're having these events. I'll keep you posted on this upcoming one on the 15th, but we're pretty pleased with the fact that we've managed to make a pretty solid impact with 100 additional vaccinations to date. And we're hoping that we'll have another successful event at the Village here on the 15th. So if you haven't received your vaccination for COVID-19, there's going to be a mobile vaccination clinic at the Village on July 15th from 4 to 7 p.m. So that's going to be an opportunity for people to address that if they are interested. We're going with the 4 to 7 time period because we think that's a good time period for people after work as well as during the afternoon hours. So that's something that we're looking forward to and some additional benefits with that. Otherwise, I was going to teasingly correct somebody from earlier talked about the Light the Night event. It's not the Light the Night event in 2021. It's the Hot Blues and Barbecue and Fireworks event because we delayed the Light the Night fireworks event until next year, but we are going to proceed with a fireworks event on July 22nd.
My apologies.
So, yes, I had to straighten that out for Deanna McGee, who wasn't here this evening, so I wanted to make sure I corrected that. But we're looking forward to having a fireworks event on July 22nd. So that is among the upcoming events. And understand the last concert in the park was very successful as well. I was out of town myself, but I do understand that it was quite a crowd there. So,
huge crowd.
Yeah.
If you would have
so I think people are excited to have the opportunity to get out in public, much like I'm excited to have the opportunity to be out in front of our city council here in person as opposed to doing it through Zoom. And I third the feelings about how much improved the Pledge of Allegiance was. That was much smoother than we experienced on Zoom and was one of the things that I appreciate about that, but I appreciate many things about that, one of which is actually being out at a public meeting with people, which is the way I think it was intended. And we did the Zoom thing because it was necessary with the circumstances, but being back face-to-face with council is something I appreciate and looking forward to seeing that continue. Not so much that I want to see a 10 o'clock meeting every couple of weeks, but you know, I do appreciate the opportunity to have an in-person meeting. So That's all I had for the city manager update. If there's any questions on anything else that I can address or anything that people want to bring up with me for inclusion in future reports, please feel free to reach out and touch base with me. So,
Yeah, if you would have told me at 4 o'clock last Thursday we were going to have a concert, period, I would have called you a name, but when I pulled up at 6:45 and saw the people that were there, it's...
And it works out very good to have the clear weather, so that was good.
Assistant City Manager Benson, do you have anything to say tonight?
I just wanted to say thank you to the members of City Council who attended our business forum earlier today. I was pretty excited about the turnout we had, 26, 27 people in total. I can't say I'd been to one before for a point of reference, but I thought it went very well, and we're looking forward to continuing that and even really fine-tuning what we're doing and what we're offering. So thank you all for that.
You're welcome.
We did have a nice crowd from City Council.
Yep, you did a great job with that. And the food was good, too.
Thanks to Quick Chick, Wixom's newest restaurant on Grand River. Check it out.
Council comments. Councilmember Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nice to see everyone in person, and that everyone, I guess, has pants on. Some were concerned wasn't going to happen. Thank you for the people from the public who did come, although it looks like we only have one public left. But thank you for coming to our meeting this evening. And the only feedback I would say is I enjoy being able to research the agenda items prior to the meeting, and having 3 walk-on items this evening, 1 amended item. Would have been nicer if we could have had some of this stuff together in advance. I mean, obviously we had a presentation prepared, so I'm not really sure how they didn't make it to the agenda. But just my personal feedback, I like to be prepared for the meeting and not coming in and trying to educate myself during the meeting.
Councilmember Gatchell.
Thank you. I'll take responsibility for 2 of the add-ons, but I mean, that's what we're here to do, is try and get stuff done. And that's, I know the presentation was something that Mr. Sigma had been working on at my request, basically, as we were discussing from the last meeting regarding local road funding. I am excited that hopefully we can cut some things off the agenda and speed up how the city does business if ballot language does get approved and gets approved by the voters in November. But I am disappointed with the road funding. I guess I can't fully grasp the apprehension. I know people ask for more information, but at a certain point the information is completely useless if you're not actually going to do anything. And that seems to be the path we're headed on. And that's something that I think, I would hope we can embrace being a little bit more proactive in the future. For years and years and years and decades, frankly, as the mayor pointed out, we had minutes dating back to 16 years ago, over 16 years ago, to address something that we addressed in 20 minutes of discussion tonight, and hopefully with a vote at the next meeting and then a positive vote in November. That's the kind of reactiveness, I think, that kind of lands us in positions that we find ourselves spending a lot of money to get out of, whether it's paying for parking lots out of budget stabilization, or corporate road or commercial roads out of budget stabilization, because we have all this infrastructure and we don't think, how are we going to pay for this, because it's not going to exist forever. We just kind of treat it like a set it and forget it situation when it isn't at all. And so that's, I'd be interested to see where we end up in road funding, but I genuinely hope for everyone's wheels and suspensions that it's not 3 years down the road that we finally do something about it. Thank you.
Councilmember Gremlin Fox.
Thank you. I too would like to say it feels strange to be back, but it is nice to see everybody in person. But I don't have pants on, but I do have a dress, so I am appropriate. I'd also like to share my condolences with the family of retired firefighter Doug Campbell. And then, Steve, about the vaccination clinic.
Yes.
How are we advertising that?
through email blasts, website posts, Facebook posts, working with Oakland County for flyers, direct email campaigns with the village residents and other residents of apartment complexes. We're doing the best we can to get that word out as best we can with the resources that we have at our disposal. So.
And it's a mobile unit, you said? So
Yeah, these ones at the
you can't
village.
miss it.
Correct. It's a vehicle that they bring on site, and that, to my knowledge, is the plan for the 15th as well.
Great, thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, we're pleased with the partnership that we have with the county as well as Ready Nursing Solutions there.
Councilmember Short.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to share Councilmember Behrman's comments about preparation. They say the only bad questions, ones that aren't asked. Well, I don't ask any because I don't know what to ask if I don't see the stuff ahead of time. So it is good to be prepared. I think we're more effective when we're ready coming in. But on a bright note, Library Director Dixon's still here, and I wanted to thank her. What a wonderful facility we have in the library. I actually went there today to get a book, found it online, said it was there. I went in, they had it ready for me when I went in, and then I spent some time looking at magazines, and I was like, it's been not just COVID, but probably 3 or 4 years since I've been in that building, and it's so nice and fresh feeling, and it's got new stuff, and well displayed, and staff was friendly, so really positive experience for me in the city that I hadn't had a chance to take on or experience in the last few years. So thank you very much. I encourage everyone to go into the library. Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't mind a couple items getting added on at the end. When we come in, I know two of those items were, Councilman Gotchell's, like you said, and I don't know the story with, the added on number 9. But I know you guys worked very hard to get this packet together. I got no problem with things getting in at the last second or last minute, and you won't put anything in front of us that we can't handle in a brief amount of time. But anyway, other than that, it is very nice to be back. There were several things very appealing about, working from home and the Zoom meetings, but there is a connection here. There is a certain amount of, eye contact that we, with both my councilman and the residents. So I do like that we're here. I am looking forward to hot blues and barbecue and completely different fireworks. My family and I will all be there. I do want to, pass my condolences on the passing of retired Wixom firefighter Doug Campbell. And one more somber note. In case you're not already aware, it's actually garnered some national attention. A young Wixom resident was in a serious drowning accident a couple of weeks ago. A young man, Andy Snook, just 13 years old, is fighting some very serious injuries, and his family has asked for prayers for their young son. My family and I know the Snooks a little bit, and this has hit the community quite hard, as you can imagine. God bless you, Andy.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess it is great to be back face to face. I really appreciate it, and no other comments other than perhaps a one-page letter to those association presidents that are affected on the Loon Lake perimeter or whatever with this mooring ordinance. If there's some simple clarification of 1813-140 that could be given, and just send that to the association presidents, perhaps that will at least provide some clarity as to what the ordinance is. And I would suggest maybe we do that at a minimum or so. Other than that, see everybody at the concert Thursday.
Good. Yep, and it is great to be back. It's been a long time coming, and I'm happy to be back face to face. If anybody up here on the dais or has any amendments to the charter that they'd like to see, write them down. Let's get them to us. Let's get this taken care of so we've got time, and maybe bring it at the next. Not the upcoming November election, but the following November election. We can get this done. Like I say, we've been kicking things down the road for a long, long time now. And we've talked about charter amendments for 3 or 4 years here, and we haven't done anything. Let's get it done. My hat's off to the Parks and Rec Commission, Deanna and Kathy and Cindy and Melissa. They've been doing a great job with the Thursday night concerts. The attendance has been great. We got another good band this week, 2XL. They're a local band. And then the following Thursday is the Hot Blues and Barbecue and fireworks. And looking forward to that. And looking forward to our residents. I think they're just as excited to be out as we are. And with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Support?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there tonight.